On a cold and foggy December morning, Gare du Nord in Paris was more alive than ever. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and the hum of voices, punctuated by the rhythmic screech of train coming and going. Travelers hurried through the cavernous halls, their faces set with purpose, while tourists lingered uncertainly, clutching maps and suitcases, trying to make sense of the chaos. It was a place of constant movement, a crossroads where stories began and ended every hour. Yet, amid that swirling tide of humanity, something unusual drew the gaze of passers-by. There, in the heart of the Great Hall, stood a little girl, no more than 6 years old. She was alone, her small form dwarfed by the grandeur of the station, her eyes fixed on a distant point, as if searching for someone only she could see. She clutched a worn teddy bear to her chest, its fur matted from years of love, and in her other hand, she held a crumpled note. On the note, written in hurried, uneven letters, was a single word: Camila. The paper looked as if it had been folded and unfolded 100 times, carrying with it the silent weight of worry. No adult lingered nearby. The girl's face was pale, her cheeks flushed from the cold, and her eyes, large and tired, scanned the crowd with a mixture of hope and resignation. She didn't cry, she didn't call out. She simply waited, as if waiting was all she had ever known. It wasn't long before the station police noticed her. They approached gently, uncertain how to proceed. There was something unsettling about Camila's composure. Most children lost in a place so vast would dissolve into tears or panic, but not her. When they asked where her parents were, she answered softly, almost mechanically, "I'm waiting." It was all she would say. The bustling station, usually a backdrop for fleeting goodbyes and joyous reunions, suddenly became the center of a mystery. How could a child so young end up alone in one of the busiest train stations in the world? She didn't appear lost. Her stillness suggested she was exactly where she was meant to be, as though she'd been instructed to wait, come what may. The note with her name was the only clue. The officers tried to coax more information from her, but she remained silent, eyes flickering occasionally to the entrances, as if expecting someone to appear. Her small body shivered in the December chill, but she seemed indifferent to the discomfort, wrapped in a cocoon of silent anticipation. Realizing they needed help, the police called for a social worker. Claire, a woman with years of experience and a gentle demeanor, arrived soon after. She tried to connect with Camila, offering her a piece of chocolate and speaking in soothing tones. But Camila showed no interest in food or drink. She simply sat, her gaze distant, her mind somewhere far away. Claire sensed that the girl's need for solitude was profound, that she was guarding herself from a world she no longer trusted. Hours passed. The station's tempo never slowed, but for those involved in Camila's case, time seemed to stretch. The officers and Claire worked together, trying to unravel the circumstances that had brought this child to their care. They checked missing persons reports, scanned security footage, and reached out to hospitals and shelters, but there was nothing. No one had reported a child named Camila missing. No frantic parent had called in search of a lost daughter. It was as though she had materialized out of thin air, with only the note and her bear to tie her to the world. The footage from the station cameras offered a few more pieces to the puzzle. Camila had arrived alone, walking with a determined stride. She did not look back. She did not hesitate. She simply found a spot in the hall and began to wait. There was no sign of an adult accompanying her, no hurried goodbye or tearful embrace. The officers grew uneasy. This was not the behavior of a child accidentally separated from her family. Something else was at play. All the while, Camila waited. She watched the people around her with a detached curiosity, but never reached out for help. Her silence was not that of fear, but of someone who had already accepted the uncertainty of her fate. Claire, moved by the child's quiet strength, tried one last time to break through. In a moment of rare vulnerability, Camila looked up and whispered, "I don't know where they are, but I know I'll be okay." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Claire realized that Camila was not a child waiting to be rescued. She was a child who had learned to endure. As night fell and the crowds in the station thinned, the sense of mystery deepened. The authorities expanded their search, reaching out to agencies in other cities. But still, no trace of Camila's family emerged. The unanswered questions multiplied. Who had left her here? Why had no one come forward? The only certainty was that Camila's story was far from ordinary. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the station's high windows, a man appeared. He was unremarkable at first glance, dressed in a grey overcoat and a hat that shaded his eyes. But there was an air of purpose in his stride. He approached the information desk and quietly asked for Camila. One of the officers recognized him immediately. His name was Mark, a former detective who had once been involved in a case that bore unsettling similarities to this one. Mark was ushered into the room where Camila waited. Claire watched, her heart pounding with anticipation. As Mark entered, Camila's eyes lit up. There was no fear, only a quiet recognition, as if she had known all along that he would come. Mark knelt beside her, his voice gentle and reassuring. "Camila, you were waiting for me, weren't you?" She nodded, clutching her bear a little tighter. The room seemed to hold its breath as Mark began to speak. He explained that years ago, he had met Camila's mother, Sophia, under difficult circumstances. Sophia had been fleeing an abusive relationship, desperate to protect her daughter. For years they had lived in the shadows, moving from place to place, changing names and addresses, always looking over their shoulders. Mark had tried to help them, but Sophia had vanished before he could do more. Now, he revealed, Sophia had returned to Paris, hoping to find safety at last. But something had gone wrong, and she was forced to leave Camila at the station in the hope that someone trustworthy would find her. The note with Camila's name was a silent plea for help, a message to anyone who might care enough to look beyond the surface. Mark's voice trembled as he spoke of his guilt for not having found them sooner. But Camila, wise beyond her years, seemed to understand. She reached out and took his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his with surprising strength. Claire felt a wave of relief and sadness wash over her. The mystery was not one of abandonment, but of desperation. A mother's last attempt to save her child from a world that had failed her too many times. Camila's calmness was not apathy, but resilience. She had learned to wait, to hope, and to endure. With Mark's arrival, the authorities were finally able to piece together the fragments of Camila's story. She was not lost, nor forgotten. She was loved fiercely, even if that love had forced her into solitude. Mark promised to care for her, to give her the safety and stability she deserved. As the days passed, Camila began to open up. The haunted look in her eyes faded, replaced by a cautious optimism. She started to talk, to laugh, and to play. Small victories that meant everything to those who had come to care for her. Claire watched her blossom, grateful that the waiting was over. Camila's story is a testament to the quiet strength of children, to the sacrifices made by parents in impossible situations, and to the power of hope in the face of uncertainty. It reminds us that behind every mystery, there is a human story waiting to be told, a story of love, loss, and the enduring belief that no matter how long the wait, there is always the possibility of a new beginning. In the end, Camila found her place in the world, not through grand gestures or dramatic rescues, but through the simple act of being seen, understood, and cared for. Her journey from the cold halls of Gare du Nord to the warmth of a new home is a reminder that every child deserves to feel safe, cherished, and loved. As we reflect on Camila's story, let us remember that there are countless others like her, waiting for someone to notice, to care, and to help them find their way. In a world that often moves too quickly to see the quiet struggles of the vulnerable, may we all strive to be the person who stops, listens, and offers a hand. If you found Camila's story moving, consider exploring more stories of resilience, hope, and the extraordinary strength found in ordinary lives. Every story matters, and every act of kindness can change a life.